Hello and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Al24 streaming live from the capital Algiers, and these are tonight's top stories of our news. The death toll from the attack on a military school in Homs has risen to 89, and UN calls for the protection of civilians in Syria. Algeria denounces the terrorist attack on the military academy. All Palestinians were killed by Zionist occupation forces within the 24-hour. The Palestinian Authority warns against crossing red lines, and the European Union delegation in the occupied territories stresses the need to ensure accountability. Election of the head of the state and Speaker of the National Assembly raises differences and deepens division in Libya. And UN mission stresses the need for laws to be consensual and applicable to ensure the holding of elections. European Union summit in Granada fails to reach a consensus on immigration issue. The division deepens within the bloc amid Warsaw and Budapest's insistence on rejecting what they consider to be dictates from Brussels. Hello again and welcome. A funeral was held at a military hospital in Syria's central city of Homs on Friday after the devastating drone attack claimed the lives of at least 89 people and left 277 others injured. The incident, one of the deadliest single attacks in years in the country, happened Thursday after a graduation ceremony for Syrian military officers at the military academy in Homs.
After the whole graduation ceremony, all the families were called over to congratulate the students. So we decided to join them in congratulating our colleagues, who we spent 2 years with. As we entered, a big explosion took place and has caused many casualties. We tried to help people, bringing them to this military hospital. Many students from our batch were killed. They were dear friends. May their souls rest in peace.
The same line of thought Secretary General expressed his deepened concern about the attack on a military academy graduation ceremony in Homs on Thursday, which reportedly resulted in over 100 casualties, including civilians. A UN spokesperson said. In a press conference in New York, United Nations spokesman Stephane Dujarric stressed the need to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure, calling on all parties to respect its obligations under international law.
Secretary General is deeply concerned about the drone attack on a military academy graduation in Homs, which reportedly resulted in dozens of casualties, including civilians and numerous injuries. The Secretary General is also deeply concerned about the retaliatory shelling by pro-government forces on multiple locations in northwest Syria and emerging reports of casualties. A nationwide ceasefire is essential for a meaningful political process to implement Security Council Resolution 2254. The Secretary General strongly condemns all violence in Syria and urges all parties to respect their obligations under international law. He also recalls that civilians and civilian infrastructure must be protected in accordance with international humanitarian law at all times.
And following this terrorist attack, Algeria strongly condemned this assault that took place at the graduation ceremony for students at the military academy in Syrian city of Homs on Thursday, leaving dozens dead and injured. According to a statement from Algerian Foreign Ministry, Algeria reiterates its support for the Syrian government and expresses its belief that Syrian people will be able to meet the immense challenges provided by the scourge of terrorism by standing together. And a different matter now, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has called on Washington to stop working with Kurdish factions in northern Syria, especially with the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, which Ankara considers a terrorist organization. During a phone call between the Turkish Foreign Minister and his American counterpart Antony Blinken, Fidan stresses the necessity of activating a mechanism to prevent clashes between that jeopardize the war against terrorist organization. Also, the Turkish Defense Ministry reported neutralizing 26 individuals in response to an attack by the Kurdistan Workers' Party and the Kurdish People's Protection Units, both classified as terrorist organizations by Ankara. The attack targeted a military base in northern Syria with the Eurofat's Shield operations area. Video footage of the Turkish response showed the attack on Kurdish targets that was shared by the ministry. In a different country now, in the occupied Palestine, a young man was killed by a settler gunfire in Hawara, south of Nablus, adding to the tally of 4 martyrs within 24 hours. Palestinian citizens in Hawara confronted an attack by settlers under the protection of occupation soldiers, leading to over 25 Palestinians, including 4 children, being affected by the tear gas. Palestinian presidency spokesman Nabil Abu Rudaina criticized the Zionist occupation's actions, describing them as a crossing of red lines due to the killing and raids in Palestinian areas. Numerous advocates from Europe and Latin America passionately argued before the 4th of United Nations Decolonization Committee for the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination, condemning Morocco occupation and violations and the resource of exploitation.
The concept of self-determination is a fundamental right for the Sahrawi people, safeguarded by the United Nations. Yet, after nearly half a century, they are still waiting for this right to be honored. Many impassioned advocates expressed their concern during the 4th Committee's meeting, responsible for special political issues and decolonization.
People's right to self-determination is a human right of the 3rd generation, rooted in the human species, not subject to deposition, universal and interconnected. Because the General Assembly renewed its adoption of the International 10-year Plan to eliminate colonialism, and this declaration is indisputable evidence that decolonization remains and will remain on the international community's agenda.
They emphasize that this right should not be eroded by the passage of time, calling upon the United Nations to adhere to its own principles and resolutions.
We condemn the decision by several United Nations member states to open diplomatic missions in the occupied Sahrawi territories. We also denounce the unilateral decision by the Moroccan occupier to define its territorial waters and exclusive economic zone, which includes waters off the coast of Western Sahara. Furthermore, we condemned its continued exploitation of natural resources.
Despite attempts to bypass the Sahrawi people's quest for independence, many countries unwaveringly support the Sahrawi cause, rooted in the belief in freedom, not oppression.
Our delegation of 40 from Europe and Latin America focuses on addressing the 4th Committee. We shed light on Morocco's infringement of the Sahrawi people's right to their territories and resource exploitation.
Today, we actively participated in the United Nations Committee urging the organization to fulfill its responsibilities, protect human rights, and abide by court rulings. It's a moral, ethical, and social responsibility to stop normalizing rights violations.
The resounding call is to ensure compliance with international law. Advocates for Sahrawi self-determination are steadfast in defending this cause.
Energy partnership between Algeria and the European Union will be strengthened with the implementation of new mega projects, especially in the field of energy transition, as highlighted during the 5th high-level annual meeting of the energy dialogue between the two sides.
As one of the most important hydrocarbon producers in the world, Algeria has always been a constant and reliable supplier of Europe in terms of gas and energy. Both parties agreed to make further progress on methane emissions and green hydrogen by facilitating and promoting industrial pilot projects, as well as organizing workshops, bringing together European and Algerian public and private stakeholders. EU Energy Commissioner Kadri Simpson underlined that Algeria has great potential to produce solar energy, has an extensive pipeline network, and enjoys good relations with Europe.
Algeria has been and continues to be an important and reliable energy supplier to the EU. Algeria has been a key partner for our gas security of supply last year. It is the second largest pipeline gas exporter to the EU and a very important LNG supplier. We discussed today the changing gas market situation and the short and medium-term outlook for gas demand in Europe. Europe is today out of last year's emergency, but we have a common interest to maintain and further increase the volumes of Algerian gas potentially available for export to Europe. Algeria is a strategic partner for the EU.
Algeria, which has always contributed to global efforts to combat climate change, demonstrates its commitment by launching huge investment projects aimed at curbing methane emissions, with the goal of reaching less than 1% by 2030, as highlighted by the Algerian Minister of Energy and Mines, Mohamed Arqab.
We have set a chronological plan to implement these projects to curb gas emissions, notably methane gas, and Algeria is ready to join any initiative to curb these emissions, in addition to other investments aimed at curbing gas emissions through chimneys. All these are 100% Algerian investments to reach less than 1% of gas emissions by 2030.
Algeria has allocated approximately $25 billion to produce green hydrogen, with ambitions to produce 2 million tons of green hydrogen during the period from 2030 to 2040, allowing it to cover 10% of European demand.
Also, the Algerian Minister of Energy, Mohamed Arqab, revealed in Afro-Station a project worth of $1 billion to plant 520,000 hectares with approximately 350 million trees during the next 10 years.
Sonatrach has started the project of afforestation in Algeria in an area of 520,000 hectares by planting over 650 million trees. This project will start next November and will last for 10 years with a 100% Algerian investment worth $1 billion.
In Africa, still, the Tunisian President Kais Saied praised the visit of the Prime Minister Ahmed Hashani and the ministerial delegation to Algeria. Tunisian President Kais Saied confirmed that the visit of the Tunisian ministerial delegation to Algeria was successful by all standards, considering that the future of the two countries can only be the same. The Tunisian president also considered that the visit highlighted the depth of relations between the two peoples and the firm and common will to further develop and advance them. In order to ensure a smooth electoral process and achieve lasting peace and stability in the nation, the UN support mission in Libya emphasized the need for solutions to be mutually accepted and implementable. The United Nations Libya mission will assess the implementability of electoral laws issued by Parliament Speaker Aguila Saleh. It said in a statement on Friday, adding it had received a copy of the laws on Thursday. Liberia's President George Weah is running for a second term. He has a message for voters ahead of Tuesday's election. He needs more time after a first term marred by corruption, allegation, and continued hardship. Many still need convincing. Former soccer star, or rather football player, who came to power in 2017 on a wave of popular support after two unsuccessful attempts, said he was on a track to deliver progress in poverty-stricken West African country, despite the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic that he said derailed his plans. The International Monetary Fund's Director General Kristalina Georgieva revealed plans to allocate a third seat for Africa on Fund's board of directors, providing Africa with a strong voice. Discussions are ongoing about the specifics of this change.
Good news for Africa. We are advancing a preparation to have a third representative of Sub-Saharan Africa in our executive board. There are some still discussions. How is the African continent coming together? What does it mean? But ultimately what it would mean is stronger voice for Africa.
In Europe now, Poland and Hungary prevented the EU to reach a final declaration of European Union Pact on migration and asylum in an informal summit in Granada, Spain.
The debate on migration in Europe is never-ending, as it's still sparking disputes between European member states. On Friday, Hungary and Poland threatened to block a final statement outlining countries' views on migration at an EU summit in Granada in southern Spain.
I told several prime ministers yesterday, and I will say it today at the plenary session, that Poland definitively rejects this, first and foremost for the security of our country.
Poland and Hungary was not satisfied with the proposal, but they pushed us through, pushed through the proposal. So Hungary and Poland was totally left out of that. So after this, there is no any chance to have any kind of compromise and agreement on migration.
The issue of migration was not on Grenada's agenda, given the sharp differences it raises among member states. But British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his Italian counterpart Giorgia Meloni pushed for holding a six-party meeting to discuss the issue on the sidelines of the summit, a step that seems to have provoked resentment, especially from Germany that was excluded from the meeting, demonstrating the depth of disagreements and divergence of opinions on this sensitive issue.
We are, with legal pathways and humanitarian corridors, the stricter we can be and have to be with the return of those who are not eligible for asylum. Because one thing must also be very clear, we have our international obligations, we will fulfill them, we have done that in the past, we do this now, but we as Europeans will decide who comes to Europe and under what circumstances, and not the smugglers and traffickers.
The European Union has taken a tough stance on illegal immigration. It prevented the release of a joint declaration on migration at the conclusion of the European summit in Granada. This is what happened at the end of last June's Brussels summit, when the Polish-Hungarian duet prevented the meeting's outcomes from being adopted.
Germany expressed concern over rising tensions between Kosovo and Serbia, resulting in an exchange of fire and 4 casualties. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock stated that this escalation threatens the European Union's enlargement process with Western Balkan countries. Baerbock emphasized the importance of security, freedom and peaceful coexistence in building a strong region and fostering EU partnership based on mutual respect for territorial integrity.
We have seen a backlash on security issues in recent days and weeks that we thought were somehow resolved. You cannot create a strong region here in the absence of security, freedom and peaceful coexistence. The path to the European Union is built on partnership with mutual respect for territorial integrity. That is why I continue to have extensive talks here regarding security in the region.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and Uzbek President Chovak Mirziyoyev praised relations between the two countries as they met in Kremlin on Friday. Moscow occupies a confident first place among Tashkent's trading partner. Russian President Vladimir Putin said at talks with Uzbek leader. For his part, President Uzbeki said our bilateral relations have reached a completely new level. The comprehensive strategic partnership continues in all areas.
Our relations are developing successfully. This confirms that we have a high level of allied relations. We continue working in that direction I would like to thank you for your personal involvement in developing Russian-Uzbek ties. This development is working well in all areas.
In every aspect, everything we agree on gets implemented. As you've said, we have never had such growth in turnover of commodities. It is expected to be $12 billion by the end of the year. On average, it is growing by 20% each year. If we continue at this pace, in 2 or 3 years, it will reach the $20 billion mark that we had agreed on.
The Kremlin said Russian military didn't strike civilian targets in Ukraine after it was accused of bombing a store that killed 52 people in Kharkiv. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters, "We'll repeat that the Russian army does not strike civilian targets. Strikes are launched on military targets in places where military personnel are located."
We, as before, reiterate that the Russian military does not strike civilian targets in Ukraine. The strikes are aimed at military infrastructure, concentrations of troops and representatives of Ukraine's military leadership.
U.S. President Joe Biden said there is a possibility to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping next month in San Francisco, but the meeting has not been confirmed yet. Biden team has been working to get the two leaders to meet. However, Biden and U.S. officials have emphasized that the time and place of the meeting, as well as the topics to be discussed, have not been finalized. A bus crashed in the south of Mexico on Friday and killed 16 Venezuelan and Haitian migrants and left 27 others injured, state authorities stated. The bus, which was traveling on the highway connecting Oaxaca and the central state of Puebla, tipped over along a tight curve in the road. The accident comes amid high levels of migrants arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border. Migrants attempt to cross Mexico by bus, in trucks or aboard cargo trains. However, the journey is often dangerous.
We are members of the medical service. We were notified at around 4:40 in the morning about the accident. 10 minutes later, the first ambulance arrived. There were many injured, over 25.
Senior officials from health, economy and transportation ministers assembled at the Prime Minister's office on Friday to discuss an anti-insect strategy. The French government is working hard to manage a national panic about the bed bugs that has swept the country only 9 months before the Olympic Games kick off next summer in Paris.
They creep, they crawl, they feed on your blood while you sleep, and then they may travel first class on you for some 3-star dining at the theater, on trains, buses, or subways. In fact, bedbugs go everywhere you go, and they have become a nightmare that has haunted French citizens for weeks.
Madame la Présidente, Madame la Première Ministre.
Madam President, Madam Prime Minister, a wave of panic grips the country. Bedbugs proliferate in all everyday places: hospitals, schools, workers' homes, retirement homes, prisons, trains, and even cinemas. They're causing millions of our infested citizens to experience an ordeal. They cause them to lose sleep, cause paranoia, and isolate them socially. Bedbugs are a national public health problem, but you have done nothing.
The government has been alarmed by the way the bedbug story has dominated headlines at home and abroad. Ministers fear the image of Paris is being damaged and that tourism could suffer, especially during next year's Olympics.
So yes, bedbugs are a worry for our fellow citizens who fear dealing with them. It's a real ordeal for those affected. An infestation in a home can become hell for those who live there, and the solutions to getting rid of them can be expensive. On this matter, there should be no division. There should be collective determination to act.
Although there were multiple stories that 37 cases reported on buses and trains proved unfounded, but viral videos on social networks of tiny critters burrowing in the seat of train show that bedbugs have infested the media.
We saw a rise in France of bed bugs, but it's an old phenomenon. It started more than 10 years ago. What we've seen is that the population of bed bugs double once every 5 years. So it's rising quite slowly, but at a regular rate, so it's quite concerning, of course. And right now we also have a media bubble about that subject, and also people are very scared about it, and of course they take video in the train, in the subway, of things that were there before, but they just didn't notice.
While the government kept telling its citizens to manage this insect dilemma on their own, now the plan has changed, and French authorities must intervene to help fight this bug spreading, not only for the sake of the French people in the first place, but also for the waves of tourists and supporters coming to attend the Paris Olympics in 2024.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for being with us in this late hour. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And all I can say at the end, take care of yourself and good night.